Okay, so you've had your students go out and collect data, and now it's time to take a look at what they've come up with. So there's a couple of different ways we can take a look at the data that's been collected. The first one is through looking in Survey 123. So I'm going to go up and click on the little waffle thing here and go to Survey 123. And I have a fun little activity that I had my students do in the last week of school, and it was the Eden treasure hunt. And so the survey was very simple. They just had to find a variety of things that I had already decided, like, for instance, the bus stop, the door to the greenhouse, the football stand, etc., etc. And they had to uh, tell me their group number. So I split them up into groups. They had to identify the object that they had found, so maybe the door to the greenhouse. They had to take a picture of that door, and they had to geolocate it. So once everybody had come back to class, I could simply click on the data here, and I'm going to look at analyze. And when I do that, what I can do is I can, first of all, look at the answers to all the different questions. So I can see here that group one found the most amount of things during the treasure hunt. So very quickly, I can see that group one did really well. Its closest rival was group number 7. Now, typically, the students, find all the easy things. It's the hard to find things that I want to make sure that they definitely found. So if I click on data, you can see the location of all the treasure hunt items that are on here. And what I can do is I can filter this. So either, for instance, I'm going to filter it by what group you're in. So group 1, and I'll click apply. And I can see the location of all the items that they have found. So for instance, the oak tree was the hardest thing to find. And if I click on this, I can see that they've got a picture of the oak tree. So they definitely found the hardest to find thing. I could also check to see, for instance, did they find, what was this one? They had to take a picture of flowers. So it's definitely flowers, and they found it in the inside courtyard of the school. Now, another way I could do this is instead of looking for what group they're in, I could be looking um, for instance, the small oak tree. So every single group, where did they find the oak tree? And you can see that there's some outliers here. They thought this was an oak tree, which it was not. Whoops. So that's one way I can look at the data. But the other way I can look at the data is to go into ArcGIS and start manipulating it. So what I had my students do um, when they did the tree survey was to come back, and each person was going to manipulate the data so that they would have a couple of different layers showing a variety of features. So if I go back, and this time I'm just going to click on content, and in my collection of files here, now I've got a whole bunch of file folders here for all my different courses, for all the different maps. But if I scroll down here, you'll see all these things that say survey. So each one of these were a survey that I created and data was collected. So if I go down here and I see the tree treasure hunt, and I click on it, um, in here I've got a variety of different of features. Now, to get the original set of data here, I'm going to find the a feature hosted in the name of the survey. So when I click on it, up comes my original data. And at the moment, the only person who has access to this is myself. So what I typically do is I go in, I zoom into my data here. So this is all the data that was collected by my students. So I got lots and lots of points here. And I would just simply save it. And then I'm going to click on share, and I'm going to share it with either a group that I've created with all of my students in it, or I could share it to the District School Board of Niagara. Either way, I'm going to take this link and I'm going to send it to my students. So I typically just post it in my D2L um, class announcement area. And once I've done that, they're going to be able to open up this map, make a copy of it, and start manipulating it. So once they've got that, typically what I have them do is I have them we walk through this together as a class. So it's not for marks, but it's just sort of a way for them to explore the data. So I can just make a couple of copies of this. So I'm going to make, let's say, 3 copies. And it's with the copies that I'm going to manipulate and show different things. So for instance, let's say with my first copy, I want to show where all the deciduous trees are. So I'm going to rename this deciduous trees. And now what I can do is I can filter this so that the type of tree is deciduous. And when I apply the filter, voila, all of these will be deciduous trees. Now I probably want to change the symbol so that it looks like something else. For instance, I don't know, maybe I'm going to go for green. Whoops, that's a little too big. There we go. My other way I could manipulate it is, let's say with this one, I'm going to turn off that other layer. I'm going to turn this one on. I can use the change style button. And in this case, I'm going to go by tree type. And it's automatically going to change the color so that I have both deciduous and conifer trees on the same map, and they're different colors. So I'm going to rename this one types of trees. All right, so let's try looking at yet another method here. So I'd ask the students to determine the this size of the tree. And when you do this, you're going to notice that there's a real mess here. What I didn't realize was that the students could choose multiple things. So they could choose mature and small. So we need to get rid of all the bad data here. So unfortunately, we want to just have mature trees, we want to have small trees, and we definitely don't want to have the mixture of trees here. So I can't just use the change style button, but I'm going to have to use that method of filtering. So I'm going to make a couple of copies of this. So I got 2 copies. And I'm going to take the first copy and I'm going to filter it so that it's going to show me mature trees. So and let's see here. We want to filter, and we want to go, let's see, size of tree is mature. When I click on apply, voila, all of these are mature trees. Once again, you'll probably want to change the symbols so that when you turn layers on and off, it's easy to recognize that you're working with a different layer. So I'm going to choose, for instance, this symbol here. So those are my mature trees. And I'll change this one so that it's showing all of my small trees. If you make a spelling mistake while putting in a filter, it's just going to filter out everything. So you have to be very careful. And you'll notice that my old layer is turned on, the new one is not. So I need to turn on the new layer here, and I should rename this small trees. And I'll just change the symbol. And to be consistent, since we're talking about the size of trees, yeah, I decided that this was the mature trees. I'm going to use this one for the small trees. All right. Now the last thing is the students had to do a count to figure out who found the most amount of trees. So if I go back to my original layer here, just going to do a copy of it. I asked each group to do a count for a group number. So for instance, let's say I had to find out how many trees the group one found. So the first thing that they would need to do is to rename this. We're going to call this group one. We're going to filter it so that it's going to be just group number one. Group number is group one. Now what we want to do is get the computer to conduct an analysis to figure out how many dots are here. You don't want to manually go in and try and be counting each one of these. So what we can do is we can click on analysis, summarize data, and summarize within. Now, I just remembered I missed a step here. Basically, it's going to say, all right, we're going to count all of group one, but it has to be within inside of a certain polygon. So we haven't drawn our study area on here. So we need to do that before we can do this step. So I'm just going to go back to details, and I'm going to create a new layer. So I'm going to go add map notes, and I'll call this boundary. And I'm just going to trace out the school property. So I'm just going to single click through here. And I'll call this boundary. We've got a nice color. So outline it. All right. So now what we want to do is go back to our layers here, and I'm going to be working with group one and the boundaries. So I'm going to click on analysis, summarize data, summarize within. I want to use the boundary to determine where all the dots are. And then I want to count up. In this case, it could be group one, it could be whatever group I've filtered. And then down here, I have to be careful because I need a new layer name. So for instance, I'm going to call this results for group one. I'm going to put V2 at the end because I'm pretty certain I already have a layer by this name, and it's not going to let me use the same name twice. Now here's a little bit of a trick. If I'm really zoomed in right like this, you'll see it says use current map extent. It's only going to count up the dots that are visible. So I want to make sure that my entire study area is visible, or I need to uncheck this box, otherwise it's going to make a mistake in its count. So when I click on Run Analysis, we're going to have this little spinning circle here as it chews away and counts up everything. And once it's done, it's going to have that new layer with our results. So I'm just going to turn off everything else and just wait a few moments here as it does the calculation. When it's a Chromebook, it might take a while, and even worse yet, if you have a slow internet connection, it may take some time for it to do this. Okay, so you'll see it's a very simple layer that's been created here with that dot in the middle. So when I click on that, now if I've got other layers that are active, you'll notice that when I click on this, it may not give me the layer I'm looking for, so I might have to click on this little button here to get to the next layer. So um, it's just easiest if I have only the layer that I want to work with on. So when I click on this, you'll see that they've found 90 trees. So I have each one of the groups read out, how many did group one get, how many did group two get, and so on, and then give out candies to the best group. So that's how you manipulate the data.